Hello learners, today we are going to begin with the third prose lesson in your NCERT syllabus called The Little Girl, written by Katherine Mansfield. Let me first tell you what all we are going to discuss during this video. So in the first section we'll discuss some brief biographical details about the author and I will introduce the story to you. In the second section I will explain the story line by line along with the difficult words and the meanings. So let's begin. Katherine Mansfield's real name was Kathleen Mansfield Murray. She was born on 14th October 1888 and she died on 9th January 1923. Mansfield was a very prominent short story writer and a poet, originally from New Zealand. She later settled in England at the age of 19. Mansfield died at the young age of 34 due to tuberculosis. Now let me introduce the story to you. This story was first published in 1921 with some other short stories. It explores the relationship between a father and a daughter. The little girl Kezia learns that behind the strict image of her father is a loving, caring man who makes her feel safe and loved. So there is a transition between the relationship that Kezia and her father share in the beginning of the story, which is of fear and authority. Towards the end, it changes into a loving, caring bond between them. The story also explores the relationship between Kezia and her grandmother. Her grandmother loves her very dearly and she takes care of the little girl whenever she is scared. Let's jump straight into the story now. To the little girl, he was a figure to be feared and avoided. So he here refers to the little girl's father. For this little girl, her father was someone that she feared, that she was scared of, right? Every morning before going to work, he came into her room and gave her a casual kiss, to which she responded with, "Goodbye, father." And oh, there was this glad sense of relief when she heard the noise of the carriage growing fainter and fainter down the long road. So every morning, her father came into her room to wish her goodbye and then he went away. She always replied saying, "Goodbye, father." Now look at the last part of this sentence. She feels relieved. She feels satisfied when she hears her father's carriage drive away. So when the sound of his carriage grows fainter, now fainter means in decreased volume, right? So whenever the sound grows fainter, she becomes happy. She feels relieved. She is happy that her father has gone away. In the evening, when he came home, she stood near the staircase and heard his loud voice in the hall. "Bring my tea into the drawing room. Hasn't the paper come yet? Mother, go and see if my paper's out there, and bring me my slippers." See how the father talks to everyone in the authoritative tone, right? He orders everyone around and expects them to follow orders. He is ordering around his mother. He is also ordering around his wife, right? Let's move on. "Kezia," mother would call to her, "if you're a good girl, you come down and take off father's boots." Slowly, the girl would slip down the stairs, more slowly still across the hall, and push open the drawing room door. Her mother calls her to take off her father's boots, right? Look at how the girl slowly approaches her father. This clearly shows how much she is afraid of her father. She doesn't want to go near her because she is very scared. By that time, he had his spectacles on and looked at her over them in a way that was terrifying to the little girl. So the father puts on his specs and looks at her in a very terrifying manner. Terrifying means to scare somebody. So he looks at her in a very scary manner and she becomes scared looking at him. She has this sense of fear whenever she goes near her father. "Well, Kezia, hurry up and pull off these boots and take them outside. Have you been a good girl today?" So he asks her a question. He asks her if she's been a good girl, if she's been a good child, right? "I don't know, father." "You don't know? If you stutter like that, mother will have to take you to the doctor." So look how her father is giving her orders to take his shoes off, and she's not, like the father is not even polite to her. So when he asks her a question, she's unable to talk. She's unable to express herself at all. She's stuttering in front of him. So this shows how the little girl is very scared of her father. She never stuttered with other people, had quite given it up. but only with father, because then she was trying so hard to say the words properly. So this little girl is so scared of her father that she is trying very, very hard to say whatever she is trying to say, that she starts to stutter, that she starts to stammer. What's the matter? Why are you looking so wretched about? What are you looking so wretched about? Mother, I wish you taught this child not to appear on the brink of suicide. Here, Kezia, carry my teacup back to the table carefully. So he says, what is the matter? What happened to you? Why are you looking so wretched? Wretched means why are you looking so unhappy? Right? Why are you looking so wretched? Why are you looking so unhappy? And then he is complaining to his mother, Kezia's grandfather. He addresses the grandmother and says, Mother, please tell this child to not look like that. Please tell this child to not look so unhappy. And then he gives her another order. Here, Kezia, carry my teacup back to the table carefully. So he gives her a teacup and asks her to carry it back to the table carefully. Now you notice, this man is scolding her, giving her orders and scaring her constantly, and still he asks her not to look unhappy. It is not possible for a child not to look unhappy, right? Because she is clearly not happy. He was so big, his hands and his neck, especially his mouth when he yawned. Thinking about him alone was like thinking about a giant. So this girl is so small, so little, that whenever she thinks about her father, she thinks that he's huge, he's like a giant, he's so big in her mind, right? On Sunday afternoons, grandmother sent her down to the drawing room to have a nice talk with father and mother. So her grandmother always sent her to the drawing room to talk to father and mother. But the little girl always found mother reading and father stretched out on the sofa. Look at this picture. The father is stretched out on the sofa, he is lying down on the sofa, and the mother is busy reading. So whenever this girl tried to go to the parents to talk to them, they were always busy. His handkerchief on his face, his feet on one of his best cushions, sleeping soundly and snoring. So her father was always sleeping and snoring, and her mother was always busy reading. So she could not hold any conversation with them. She could not talk to them at all. So no wonder why she is stuttering, because she has not learnt to talk, to express her feelings at all. Right? She sat on a stool, gravely watched him until he woke and stretched and asked the time, then looked at her. Don't stare so, Kezia. You look like a little brown owl. So she sat on a stool. She quietly went there to talk, but she couldn't talk, so just went there and sat on the stool gravely. Gravely means in a very sad manner, not very happily. So she sat there and she just watched them do their own thing. So she would watch the father sleeping and she would watch the mother reading. At one point of time, when the father would get up, and he would ask her, what happened, why are you staring at me like that? So then the little girl wouldn't say anything. One day, when she was kept indoors with a cold, her grandmother told her that father's birthday was next week and suggested she should make him a pincushion for a gift out of a beautiful piece of yellow silk. So one day her grandmother suggested that father's birthday was next week, and she wanted her to make a pincushion for him for his birthday. Now let's take a look at this picture. This is a pin cushion, right? This is what a pin cushion looks like. So the grandmother advises her to make a pin cushion for the father's birthday, right? Laboriously with the double cotton, the little girl stitched 3 sides, but what to fill it with? That was the question. The grandmother was out in the garden and she wandered into mother's bedroom to look for scraps. So she goes into her mother's room to look for scraps. Scraps means waste cloth. So she goes into her mother's room to look for waste cloth to fill into the pin cushion that she is trying to make for her father's birthday. On the bed table, she discovered a great many sheets of fine paper, gathered them up, tore them into tiny pieces, and stuffed her case. Then sewed up the 4th side. So she goes to the table, she notices that there are a lot of papers there. So she tears them all, makes small bits out of those papers, and then fills it up in her cushion, right? Pin cushion. That night there was a hue and cry in the house. So hue and cry means everybody was very disturbed. There was a huge seen about this whole these papers, right, which were not to be found anywhere in the house. Father's great speech for the port authority had been lost. So what had been lost? Father's speech had been lost. Rooms were searched, servants questioned. Finally, mother came into Kezia's room. Kezia, I suppose you didn't see some papers on the table in our room? Oh, yes, she said. I tore them up for my surprise. What? Screamed mother. Come straight down to the dining room this instant. So her mother comes to her room and asks her if she's seen some papers, and Kezia, because she's a little innocent girl, she accepts it and she says that yes, I have used those papers to fill my pincushion with. And she was dragged down to where father was, pacing to and fro, hands behind his back. So the father was walking to and fro from one side of the room to the other and then back. So he's walking in this sort of motion with his hands behind his back. He's very angry because he can't find his speech. Well, he said sharply. Mother explained. He stopped and stared at the child. Did you do that? So he's very angry and he asks the child, Did you do that? So what does the child say? She says, No, 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 no. She whispered. So she's so scared that she's not even able to form a proper sentence. So she just says one word in which she stutters. So she says, No, 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 no. Mother, go up to her room and fetch down the damn thing. See that the child's put to bed this instant. So he's very angry and he tells his mother to take the child to bed, put her to bed, and put her to sleep. And he asks for that little damned pincushion that she was trying to make. Crying too much to explain, she lay in the shadowed room watching the evening light make a sad little pattern on the floor. So she was crying so hard. She was very scared because her father had scolded her so much. So she's just lying there in her room and she's watching the lights and shadows, the pattern that the lights are making in her room, right? Then her father came into the room with a ruler in his hands. So he comes to her with a scale, with a ruler in his hands. I'm going to beat you for this, he said. He pulled them aside. So he pulled her hands aside and he says, I am going to beat you for this. Sit up, he ordered. So he's very angry. He says, Sit up, and then hold out your hands. You must be taught once and for all not to touch what does not belong to you. So he says, I have to teach you a lesson. You should never touch anything which is not yours, which does not belong to you, right? But it was for your birthday. So she's still stuttering. She says, I am sorry, but it was for your birthday. It was your surprise. Down came the ruler on her little pink palms. So this girl is so small. She has beautiful pink palms. And then the father strikes at those little pink palms with the ruler because he wants to punish this little child. So that's it for this video. We'll move on to the next part in the next video.